cut one towards the back of the wing too. And I'll just glue the trailing edge, the leading edge we can get from the inside. A good point to make here is thinning trailing edges of wings. This kit is nice and thin, and there's no work to be done. Some kits, the trailing edge is much too thick for scale. Okay, now that we've got that glued together, I'm going to take the super glue, this hole that we made, just going to put a couple drops inside the wing, and I'm going to let that run around the inside of the wing. Okay, now I've blocked the wing up with my sanding block and various thicknesses of sheet plastic until I've come to something close to the same angle that's shown in the 3-view drawing in one of my reference books. I'm going to go ahead and glue it in place using those blocks. Now in preparing to glue this wing on, I don't want to fill the area between the flap and the fuselage or the leading edge slat in the fuselage with glue. So I'm going to take a little piece of clay, put a little piece of clay there to act as a dam. Also try not to get too much glue in that area. Take some super glue, make sure it's on the blocks. Okay, I've still got the wing blocked up. I'm coming back and filling the line up completely and slightly overfilling it so we can sand this out and eliminate our seam. Okay, my glue's dried. Ready to sand this seam out. Now because I'm coming into a right angle right here, I'm going to fold a piece of sandpaper in half and sand right into that seam. In this area where it becomes flush, I'll go ahead and sand that, and I'll use my fingers to back it up. I would block sand it, but it's not flat. Now I've sanded the seam out, polished it. Come in and remove the debris from all the surrounding lines with a toothbrush to determine what needs to be rescribed. I'm going to come in here with a straight edge, and because this is a nice flat surface, I'll just go straight in with the scribe tool. And what I just did there, I missed my line. I used a knife blade and I scratched the surface. Those are easily burnished out with a fingernail. Press it back in, start over. And it shouldn't show. Using light passes. Now I've also lost some of my rivet detail up here. I'm going to grab my pin vise, grab a small drill bit. When using really small drill bits, it's best to have them stick out of the pin vise just a little bit. The further they stick out, the better your chance of breaking them. Now I'm going to come in and re-drill the rivets that I sanded out or filled. Just a few twists. I've taken my reference book with the 3-view drawing and I've drawn lines across where the landing gear are and on the vertical stabilizer, which are at a slight angle. Now I've taken a piece of sheet plastic and cut it to that angle. I'm going to use this as a template to make sure that I get my vertical stabilizers lined up properly. I'm going to position it. I'm taking my template. I'm going to look down the length of the fuselage. I'm going to line this up. Right now I'm going to come in with some super glue and tack it into place. And a couple tacks along the edge. Then we'll come back and fill this seam. I'm going to check it with my template again. Okay, it looks right still. So I'm going to Get a quick shot of the accelerator. Now our stabilizers are given the same block treatment as the wings, using the 3-view drawing, determining how many blocks to put under it. And we're not going to fill this seam. The reason I'm not going to fill the seams on the stabilizer is that most modern fighters, the entire stabilizer moves, so there would be a gap there. Okay, what we're going to do now is remove the canopy from the tree. Nice little trick I found for removing canopies is to use a hot knife. Take a candle and an X-Acto knife, heat your blade up, and carefully cut through the tree, leaving a little bit of excess that will come back and file off. Carefully file away the burrs. The hot knife trick works especially well when you have no canopy frame surrounding the canopy like we've got here. And if you don't use a hot knife, you take a chance of stress fracturing the glass. There's nothing you can do about that. Okay, we've removed the burr with a file, gotten it kind of close. Now I'm coming in with some 400 wet, and I'm going to block sand that down till it's about flush. Now a little bit of 600 wet. Now a little 1200 wet. Okay, we've removed all the burrs. We're ready to start polishing the canopy now. Notice the difference between your unpolished canopy and your polished canopy. Looking at the lines underneath. And an unpolished, polished one. And I'm holding my canopy up to the light here to see how much distortion I've got. Got a nice big scratch here that looks like it may need some 600 grit to take it out. I'll also hold a steel ruler up to see the clarity of the lines. Generally, I'll start out with the lightest grit to see if that does the trick. I'm starting out with some 1200 wet, and I'm going to begin with a circular motion and sand the whole canopy out. Now I'm going to come in with this piece of t-shirt soaked in Brasso metal polish. Been allowed to dry. Forms a real fine powder. Polishing powder, and just buff away. Now this is a standard automotive polishing compound, not very coarse. Does get the trick done fast though. Starting to get clear. Now I'm going to come back with just the Brasso. It's a finer polish. The more you rub, the shinier and smoother it'll get. A good polished canopy attracts a lot of attention. Come in finally with the clean t-shirt. Really buff it nice and hard. As hard as you can go without cracking the canopy. It's definitely getting clearer than it was. And I can see that there's some distortion inside, so I'm going to come back and polish the insides too. Grabbing a fresh piece of 1200, I'm going to pull it over a sharp edge on the table. This breaks the back on the sandpaper so you can roll it up without the paper cracking on you. Roll it as tight as you like. Sanding the inside of the canopy. You know, if you can locate any big scratches that the 1200 isn't taking out, go ahead and go over to 600. Nice scratch over in here. Some 600 wet. And we'll come back with automotive polishing compound again. And polish it out in. We polish our canopies because the originals do tend to show some distortion. And a good test for this, if you lay a steel ruler underneath, or even a piece of paper with typing on it, if you look at one side and roll your head over, you'll see that it does show distortion as you move, where the unpolished, or where the polished canopy doesn't show this distortion. Okay, now I'm going to paint the inside of the canopy frames. On a larger scale model, this is not so hard to do. I won't worry about covering it in one coat. Basically want to work my way up to the line, the glass frame demarcation line. Well, here where I went over the line, I'm going to come in with a toothpick and scrape some of that paint away. Okay, now we're going to use decals to paint the insides of our canopy frame. Chosen a color of gray that's close to what I want.